she walked through that door, the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen before. Sea green eyes and long blonde hair, cool smooth smile and didn't have a care. I don't know why, but she walked my way. I was scared to death, but I was ready to play. Love at first sight sets the spirit free. I felt the dark clouds part, I heard the angels sing. My heart caught fire and my soul can fly. That's when I knew I had to make her mine. Hello, everybody. Hey, I have missed you. I am so sorry things got messed up last week. As I turned on my computer crashed, or as I went live. So I had everything set up in the studio. I use Restream, and last time, as I kicked off the show and I went to start live stream, my computer crashed. Now, I don't know why, but it just did. But now we're back. So anybody, welcome to the big show. My name is Mickey, and this is Mickey in the Middle, the quintessential show for Middle Americans, where all Middle Americans are welcome. It doesn't matter where you've been, doesn't matter where you go. It just matters that you're here right now and you consider yourself a Middle American. So let's talk about what a Middle American is, right? So I'm not in the middle, left and right, although most of the time I am in the middle, left and right. I am a Middle American. That means I'm living the Middle American dream. I want what is best for my family, for my neighborhood, for my community, for my state, for the federal government, for the world, kind of like in that order. So whenever it comes right down to it, I'm just like you are. I'm just a person out here living my best life. Now, when I say I'm just like you are, we are all different. We come in all different shades. We come in all different hairstyles. We come in all different eye color. We all come in different weights. But being an American citizen in the United States of America is really a something. I'm telling you right now, if you don't believe it is a something, it is a real something. So I just want to say thank you very much. And Logan Calcaterra, congratulations. You win the first comment of the day. Hi, Logan. How you doing? And welcome to everybody else that's watching. So this is going to be an interesting program, and we're going to be talking about Supreme Court decisions, specifically the birthright citizenship question, because it's very important that everybody understands what happened. So the Supreme Court was divided on the issue of birthright citizenship. Some of the justices said that birthright citizenship by visitors, illegal aliens, people that are in the country, is a real thing. And then they had some other justices dissent. We're going to talk about all that here in just a second. But let's kick off the show the way that we normally do. Let's go do this. So, hey, we, the people of the United States of America, I love that. It is endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's somewhere in our original and founding documents. You are sharing the world with 8,304,899,270 people right now. There's 319,000 people that were born today. So today is going to be their birthday, which I think is always cool. And our debt is $39 trillion. We're holding steady at $39 trillion, but we are working on $40 trillion as hard as we possibly can. It is crazy how much money that we have borrowed against ourselves and our future generations. I think it's one of these days I'm going to explain how money works and how the federal systems work, because I think that is a made-up number. I think that we don't know how in debt the world is because the Federal Reserve systems and the International Bank of Settlements and the World Bank, and they're all run by private companies. They're all run by private banks that are supposedly overseen by the governments. So Germany's got a federal bank or a Federal Reserve. America's got a Federal Reserve. Uh, Great Britain, Spain, Portugal, Spain, Japan, China, they all have Federal Reserve banks, and that's to make sure that all the world's economies can function normally. So I don't know whether being $39 trillion in debt is a real thing, but that's for another day. So let's do it. Are you guys ready to go? Because the Supreme Court came up with some amazing they had an amazing year. They heard a lot of oral arguments, but the justices do something that's very, very unusual. And I need to explain how the Supreme Court of the United States of America works. The first thing is that if you have a case that started out local and then was appealed and then was appealed again and then got into the federal system, and once a decision has been made at the federal system, then the parties in the case can then make an application to the Supreme Court of the United States for review. And then the Supreme Court of the United States, all of the justices, well, it goes to one justice, and the one justice can make some of the decisions, but a lot of the decisions go up to the entire Supreme Court. And the entire Supreme Court takes a look at what the court system has done up to that point. And then if the people that are appealing to the Supreme Court have a good point or a constitutional point that needs to be addressed by the highest court in the land, which is the final decision maker, then the Supreme Court can take that case. Now, they can do one of two things. Well, as far as I know, they can do one of two things. So the first thing that they can do is they can deny the application, and then whatever the lower court has decided, then that is it. Then it goes back to the lower court, and the last decision made in the federal court system is the final decision. So the court can get an application and reject it outright and say, we're not going to hear this. And they vote in secret chambers whether they're going to address these things. Now, everything that goes up to the Supreme Court can also have somebody write a decision about it, right? They can actually write whatever the heck, the justices of the Supreme Court can write whatever they want to about things. And then other justices will join them in that opinion, or they will dissent if they want to. So they can write something, or they don't have to write things. They can reject it outright, or they can make a decision just on the whole case. In some cases, they hear oral arguments, which means that the attorneys inside of the case get to go to the Supreme Court on a certain day for a limited amount of time, and then they get to interact with the justices on the Supreme Court. Now, all of the justices sit in a room and they talk about all this stuff, and then they decide what's going to be accepted and what's not going to be accepted. But if you're accepted, it's a really, really big deal. As a matter of fact, the lawyers in this country, not every single lawyer can go to the Supreme Court. You have to be vetted by the Supreme Court in order to have oral arguments or be able to submit things to the Supreme Court. How about that? Did you know that the Supreme Court is picking all the lawyers that get to talk to the Supreme Court? So you and I, we can't go plead our case. Your lawyer probably can't go plead their case or your case or anybody else's case to the Supreme Court. So it's a very, very closed system, and the justices have their own little world here. Now, at this point, at this juncture, I have to tell you that the Supreme Court, or the judicial system, is one of the three branches of government. Of course, you have the executive branch, which is the president of the United States. You have the legislative branch, which is the Congress, and then you have the judicial branch. If you get out your handy dandy little constitution right here, the first part, Article 1, is the legislature. Article 2, where's Article 2? All right. So Article 1 tells you everything Congress can do. Article 2 is what the President of the United States can do and what they're responsible for. And then Article 3 is the judicial powers of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court. So the entire organization of the Supreme Court is vested in the original Constitution of the United States of America. And that's where the Supreme Court comes from. Now, Congress, if you go back to the legislative branch, it says that they can add courts or take away courts, and they're the ones that decide how many people are on the Supreme Court and how many other federal court systems that they're going to be. So all of that is vested in Congress. So I thought that that was very interesting, and I thought that you should know that. All right. So the Supreme Court this year heard some very, very interesting cases, and I want to run through those real quick with you before I get to the birthright citizenship question. So let's back it up. Let's back it up. All right. So are you guys ready to go? I'm ready to go. Hey, Don Ledger, how you doing, man? I hope you find your tile guy. All right. So let's go with Supreme Court decisions of 2026. Now, these are not all the Supreme Court decisions of 2026. These are the ones I thought were interesting enough to talk about today. Temporary protected status. Inside of our immigration system and inside of our Secretary of State system and the way that we deal with other countries, we have all kinds of great, interesting things like illegal aliens coming across the border, legal immigration, and then we have asylum cases, and we also have a thing called temporary protected status. Now, somebody in the government, I don't know who it is, has to determine if a country is going through turmoil and if they have a natural disaster or if they're at war, if somebody's being oppressed or somebody's being treated badly, or if there's some people deserve temporary protected status. Now, there's been a whole bunch of Haitians here and a whole bunch of Syrians here that have been in the country for years and years and years. And they came to the country under temporary protected status. President Trump said, hey, we need to send all these people home because the conditions in which they were being protected from no longer applies. So we need to deport all of these people back to Syria and back to Haiti. And you know what? Some lawyers said, no, don't do that. Don't send them back to where they came from. That'd be mean. We're the United States of America. We're the greatest country in the world. They need to be able to stay here. Well, the Supreme Court decided that nope, if the situation changes, the name of the program is temporary protected status. The conditions change. They no longer need the protected status. So President Trump and the Department of Deportation can send 350,000 people back to Syria and Haiti. So that's number one on the list. So temporary protected status can be determined by the executive branch. And if the conditions have changed, you can send them back. And that's what they're going to do with the Haitians and the Syrians. So next up, I'm going to do campaign. I'm going to do campaign. I'm going to do campaign finance. All right. So somebody challenged the idea that campaigns cannot be in contact or spend money if they are talking to candidates. And somebody challenged the idea because so much money was coming in that somebody went, hey, look here, man, you can't be spending money and in cahoots with whoever the candidate is because the law says that you're not allowed to have any communications and you're not allowed to spend money. Well, the Supreme Court a long time ago decided that corporations are, in fact, individuals and they act as individuals and they have freedom of speech rights. So the Supreme Court came back and said, yes, campaigns can be in communication with candidates and they can spend as much money as they want. So nothing changed in the candidate and campaign and all of these PACs that you see out there. So the Supreme Court still says that all the corporations out there still have the ability to spend as much money as they want to, and they can do it in cahoots with whoever the politicians are that are out there. Thought that was interesting. So they also decided what arrive in the United States means. So what happened was ICE had started stopping people in Mexico and saying, hey, you can't come into the United States of America because we have a doctrine that says we can determine when you arrive in the United States whether you can actually stay in the United States or whether you have to be sent back. And the Supreme Court said, you have to be in the United States, like the term when you arrive in the United States means you have to actually arrive in the United States. You can't do it by a website. You can't do it while they're in Mexico. You can't do it any other time. That the Border Patrol has to determine at the time that you arrive in the United States what your status is going to be and whether you can stay and get are allowed to let in or whether you got to go back home. So thought that was interesting. It's kind of like weird. It's kind of like what is, right? It depends on what you mean by what does is mean, as Bill Clinton said in his impeachment trial. This is what does arrive mean? I have arrived. No, you haven't arrived. You are outside of my house. You have not arrived in my house yet. So that's what that means. All right. This next one is great because if you believe in the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, which says in plain English, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you believe in that, Hawaii tried to get rid of that. Hawaii said, hey, look here, you can have a gun, but you can't go anywhere unless wherever you're going expressly says that you're allowed to carry a gun. Now, the way that it has worked up to this point, before Hawaii and several other states decided to have positive permission, is just by being in existence, you're allowed to arm up, carry your weapon. Let's get the term right? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Supreme Court decided that if you have to get positive permission from everywhere that you go, that is being an infringement on your constitutional right under the Second Amendment. This is very, very important because could you imagine that you were in danger or you just wanted to carry a gun or you were going to go to the range, or you were going to go target shooting, or you were going to go hunting, and you had weapons on you, or you had arms on you, and you were going someplace, and you decided to stop at the store, and then you decided to stop at a park, and then you decided to go to somebody else's house, or you decided to go to a business, or you decided to go visit friends. Each place that you stopped, according to Hawaii, you would have to make sure that you had the express permission of the people that were in each one of those locations, whether it's a store or somebody's personal property or out at a park, anywhere that you went, that you had to have somebody express to you, that you had to tell them that you had a weapon, and then they had to give you express permission to carry. So the Supreme Court said, that's no good. You can't do that. The law says shall not be infringed. And that means that you don't have to ask people in order to carry. They can post signs and they can tell you that we don't let weapons in here because private property and private property and state and federal property and local properties like your city, your county, stuff like that. They've got to post signs that says that you can't carry, or they have to be able to tell you that you can't carry in order to thwart that. So instead of going from positive affirmation and said that you have to find express permission, they're saying, no, you don't. You can carry until somebody tells you, no, you can't carry. So thought that was great. All right. So, how many do I want to do with this? Holy smokes. We've already been on for 19 minutes. There's a whole bunch of other ones that are on here. All right. Haircut is freedom. Can you oppress somebody because of their haircut? Well, inside of many prison systems, one of the things to go in is they monitor your hair, your hairstyle, and many hairstyles are considered religious. I don't know about that, right? But somebody went up to the Supreme Court and said, I'm going to sue the state. I'm going to sue a state over cutting my hair. And I don't know where that case went. But they also wanted to sue the person who had the clippers in their hand, who clipped off the hair. And they said, we want to sue that person too. So we're going to sue the state for freedom of religion and inhuman treatment. And we also want to sue the person that had the clippers in their hand. The Supreme Court said, nope, you can't sue the person who has the clippers in your hand because that person is only executing their job duties and whatever is required of them by their employer. So you can sue their employer, which is the state prison system, but you can't sue the individuals with the clippers if they were under direct, if they were being directed to do so. They did not address if somebody decides to come up and clip your wig in the middle of the night. They didn't even address that. So I call that haircut is freedom. And the Supreme Court said, nope, you're not allowed to sue the person with the clippers, but you can sue the state. So there's a foreclosure case in there. And basically what it said is some dude wanted fair market value for the amount of money that the bank got for his property that was foreclosed. So there was a dude, the bank foreclosed, the bank auctioned it, and then they gave the dude the money that they weren't owed. So then the dude said, no, I want the fair market value. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the house was worth $500,000 on the open market. The bank foreclosed on it, or the state foreclosed on it for taxes. They said, hey, we can only get $250. They took it to auction. They got $250,000 for it. The dude said, I want all $500,000 of that. And the Supreme Court said, no, you don't get what the fair market value is. You only get what they can get at auction. So there you go. And then Alito wrote a decision, which was amazing, about smoking dope and having a gun. This is what the crazy thing is. Smoking dope and having a gun. Alito, and I said this, you can still have a gun because Alito said marijuana is widespread and now socially acceptable. And the law was the unlawful use of a controlled substance and guns are not compatible. So they arrested somebody who was using marijuana. I think they were in Colorado. I'm not really sure. Maybe. But Alito said, like alcohol in the early days of the United States of America, everybody was using it and everybody did it. And if you outlawed somebody having a gun because they were a drunk or because they drank too much alcohol in somebody's opinion, you couldn't do that in the olden days, and you can't do it with marijuana anymore, because although marijuana is a controlled substance as deemed by the United States of America, it is common, it is widespread and socially acceptable now. So smoke them up, light them up, and you can carry a gun. But don't do anything that's going to get you in trouble if you're carrying and smoking the weed. Yeah, that was Hamani versus the United States. Yeah, because I guess this dude had a gun and he was smoking the dope. Isn't that crazy? All right. And then, all right, I got to go back to that one. All right. This is important. I'm gonna spend a couple of minutes on this one. And then I'm gonna spend the remainder of the time on birthright citizenship. Transgender athletes in women's sports. Let's talk about it. Okay. Everybody says that the Trump administration had a great big win under Title IX because the Supreme Court said that states can determine whether trans athletes can be in women's sports. It's not what everybody expects. It's not what everybody thinks. Everybody was like, yay, trans athletes can't be in women's locker rooms. They cannot be in women's sports. They cannot interfere with the execution or anything like that. That's not what the Supreme Court said. It's not what the Supreme Court said. You remember the abortion debate? So I go back to the abortion debate on this one because the Supreme Court did not say that abortion was not legal or was legal. You need to understand this. The Supreme Court did not say that abortion was not legal. What the Supreme Court said was that that is going to be left up to the states to determine. So everybody freaked out and was like, "Oh, a woman's right to choose is now gone forever." And they had great big huge protests over what the Supreme Court did, and they freaked out and they brought massive lawsuits and they condemned the right for changing the law. And that's not what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court only said in the Constitution of the United States, it does not address the idea of abortion. So that item, because it's not expressly written in the Constitution, has to be returned to the states. Because according to according to the Constitution Amendment 10, number 10 says specifically, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. That means if it's not in the Constitution, if it's not in the amendment, if it's not in the Federal Register, then abortion has to go back to the states. Why do I bring it up? Because that's the same decision that they made in the transgender case. They didn't say that transgender athletes cannot participate in women's sport. They didn't say that. What they said is the states will determine whether trans athletes can participate in women's sports. So that means in California, trans athletes can still participate in women's sport. I believe it's the same for Oregon. I believe it's the same for Washington. I think that Massachusetts has that law. I'm not sure all of the state that it applies to, but now it's up to the states. Like the state of Arkansas doesn't allow trans athletes to participate in women's sports. And I know that Mississippi, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, a lot of the different states that are running around, they also don't allow transgender athletes to participate in women's sports or go into women's spaces. So the Supreme Court didn't make a big decision about anything else other than, hey, this is not in the purview of the federal government. That means that this issue has to be returned to the states. So when you hear about a trans athlete participating in women's sports, that's the decision that the Supreme Court made. And that's the decision that the state made. So that's up to the people in the state to elect the people that they want to have representing them at the state level government. And that's the decision that each state will make independent of each other. Now, my question is, what happens when you have trans athletes that are like in the NCAA or in other sporting arenas or participating in national events when they cross state lines? Because they have all kinds of tournaments nationwide that sports teams travel from one place to another. What's the NCAA going to do about trans athletes? So if it's legal in California, then that trans athlete cannot participate in Arkansas? Or is that trans athlete, because they're legal in the state of California, can they actually come and play in Arkansas? Right? So the NCAA has some work to do. The states have some work to do in order to work that out. I don't know how that's all going to work. That was not addressed by the Supreme Court. All I know is the Supreme Court said that that decision is going to be determined by each state. I hope that makes sense. All right. I now have 5 minutes. I'm going to do 5 minutes about naturalization. Naturalization in the United States and becoming a citizen of the United States. Now, the argument was that Trump signed an executive order. The executive order said that if you are not a United States citizen and having a baby in the United States, that anchor babies, somebody on a tourist visa can't come over here and have a baby and get citizenship for that kid. Somebody's on vacation, somebody's coming over to visit, somebody drops out of an airplane, somebody just shows up in the middle of the United States, Kansas, and says, hey, I just dropped a baby. That baby is now a citizen of the United States. That is what the executive order said. That will no longer be allowed. So somebody took that executive order to the court system. They couldn't make up their mind about it. Then it ended up in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said We are going to make a determination on this based on historical guidelines and the Constitution and the amendments to the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, here's the reason why this is difficult. I need you to answer a question for me real quick, just in your head. You can put it in the comments if you want to, but nobody's going to read those. All right. How many citizens of the United States were there when the United States of America started? You can pick two dates. You can pick 1776, or you can pick 1789 when the Constitution was approved. You can pick any other date in there. How many citizens of the United States were there? Zero. There were zero citizens of the United States. The United States was a brand new thing. We had a bunch of people that were in the Revolutionary War, but they were not citizens of the United States. They were English, they were French, they were Spanish, they were Canadians. I don't think Canada existed then either. But anyway, they came down through Canada, right? They were from Portugal. So they were Portuguese. There's a whole bunch of people in the United States from all over the world, and none of them were citizens of the United States. So the United States of America had to come up with a policy. How are we going to get citizens? Because right now we don't have any. And that's where the process of naturalization came from. So the Constitution of the United States was approved by all of the states in 1789. Guess what happened in 1790? Congress came up with the idea of naturalization that basically said, and I want to make sure that this is right, that if you are in the country for 2 years, that you don't get into any trouble and you sign a pledge of allegiance to the United States of America, you can become a citizen. That's where naturalization came from. So whenever you see the term naturalization, the people that are naturalized have babies, and those babies are considered citizens by birth because they're loyal to citizens of the United States. But you got to remember, we didn't have any citizens of the United States prior to that. So when they say that we're a country of immigrants, we kind of are a country of immigrants. So people were migrating here. They would live here for, I want to say 2 years. Yeah, it was 2 years. It was 2 years. And then they could become citizen of the United States. Time goes by, and in 1790, all right, so that was in 1790 that you had the 2-year rule. In 1795, they came up with a rule that you had to be here for 5 years, have good moral character, and then you had to sign the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States. So more citizens came over, or more people came over that became citizens of the United States. And all kind of people from all over the world were doing this. They were coming to the United States. We didn't have the Statue of Liberty at that time. Everybody was just coming over to be part of this new world that they heard about. So they came to the United States. And by that time, we had a couple of million people that were citizens of the United States. Go up to 1798, and they said, no, you got to be here for 14 years, be of good moral character, and sign the pledge, and then you can be a citizen. But in 1802, they rolled that back because they weren't getting enough people that were here for 17 years, or for 14 years, and then they rolled that back to 5 years. So the idea of foreigners coming in was, hey, look here, you got to be here for a time. You got to have good moral character. You got to sign a pledge, and then you can become a citizen of the United States. And that's the way that we've been rolling and rocking for all of these years. So there's a line out the door. So Congress eventually came up with an idea of, hey, we need to have an immigration act in Congress. So they came up with an immigration law like in 1890, probably 18 something. So they came up with a immigration, what was it called? It's an Immigration Act. You can go look it up. They came up with the Immigrant and Nationalization Act or something like that. I can't remember what the name of it is. And then they established the rules for coming to the United States and becoming an immigrant into the United States. Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1917, 18. Damn it. Still can't remember it. So that then became the law of the land. And the law of Congress determined who could be a citizen and everything. But you got to remember that the amendment, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, happened right after the Civil War. So what happened was the 14th Amendment came along, and the 14th Amendment basically says XIV. Where's XIV? XIV. All persons born or naturalized in the United States of America, here it is. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. Here's why that's important. Here's why that's important. Because at that time, there was a lot of discussion about what that meant. And subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the courts have decided over the years that Indians are not subject to the decisions of the United States. That's why the Indian Bureau in Washington is a go-between between the federal government of the United States and of the Indian nations. So when you go on a reservation, you are on American soil, but you're also on the Indian reservation, and the people that are on there are not subject to the laws of the United States. They're subject to their own laws. That's why they have Indian tribunals, and that's why they have their own justice system. That's why they have their own police force. So inside of a court, they determined that they are not under the jurisdiction of the United States of America. I start with that because foreign diplomats that are also coming into the United States, the courts have also determined that foreign diplomats, it does not apply to foreign diplomats either. So then you go, well, what does subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean? Well, it's expressly written in our laws that our laws do not apply to Native Americans. In the law, it says Indians. I'm not being culturally insensitive. I'm just saying the law says Indians. It doesn't say shit about Native Americans. That's why we have the Indian Bureau still in the federal government, right? So Indians are not subject to the jurisdiction in the United States. It expressly says that. The people that are in diplomatic positions from other governments are expressly under the jurisdiction of their government. And because Congress was morons, they did not change the language of the 14th Amendment prior to being approved by the people. So it went to 2/3 of the Senate, 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, signed by the President of the United States, and 3/4 of the states signed the 14th Amendment. That means that is the law. So there's a case called Wong Kim Ark, and his parents were here legally, and they were longtime residents of the United States. Their kid went out of the country, and when the kid tried to come back into the country, the immigration department said, you can't come back into the country because you're not a citizen. And there was a great big huge debate in the legal circles that said the people here are legal residents of the United States, although they are not citizens. The kid was born in the United States. Because they are legal residents and the kid was born in the United States, they should be able to stay based on the being subject to the jurisdiction thereof, because that kid is subject to the jurisdiction thereof because he was born here. He wasn't born somewhere else. Because he was born here, this is the only country that actually has a jurisdiction thereof of that kid. Your legality in the United States is not subject to your parents. Your legality in the United States is not subject to your brother, your sister, your cousins, anybody else that's in the United States. The jurisdiction that you're under solely resides in you. So the Supreme Court and Wong Kim Ark decided that being subject to the jurisdiction thereof back then meant that they are subject to the laws of the United States, and therefore the kid was actually a citizen of the United States. Now, times have changed. Those people were long-term residents of the United States. And because they were legal residents of the United States, that case was different than what Trump was saying. Trump was saying, hey, look here, people are doing tourist birth citizenship, where you come over as a tourist, you drop a baby, and now all of a sudden the kid is legal to be here. And that's not right, because they're not loyal to the United States. So because the parents are not loyal to the United States of America, what's the jurisdiction of the kid? Now, the argument inside of the Supreme Court was the intended articles, the intention of the 14th Amendment was to say that people that are legally in the United States, legally immigrated to the United States, and were subject to the laws of the United States and not loyal to any other country were citizens of the United States. That's what the intention was. But for some reason, the Naturalization and Immigration Act did not use the 14th Amendment did not use the same language that they used in the immigration law. So because they didn't use the same immigration, they had to refer back to historical precedents of, hey, we had zero citizens. What are the things to be here? Well, you got to be here for a minimum amount of time. You got to be loyal to us, and you got to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States of America. So the Supreme Court decided in a split decision that those people, even if they're temporary, the parents, even if the parents are temporary, the kid, because the kid was born here according to historical precedents from the beginning of the country all the way up until now, and because of Wong Kim Ark, that means that the kids that are born here are citizens here. That's crazy. But it's not crazy, because the court is only supposed to make decisions based on the information and the historical background of whatever the case was presented as. And all the people said was, what Trump said in an executive order is not legal. And I don't know whether it is. So Carolyn Greggs says, that's why they can shoot off all those monstrous fireworks. Yes. I don't know what that means. So they can't shoot off all those monstrous fireworks. So where does this leave us in the birthright citizenship decision? Well, in my estimation, because Congress makes the rules about naturalization, you got to remember, Congress has made the rules about naturalization. The first one was back in 1790 that said, hey, look here, if you're in the United States for 2 years in good standing, good moral character, and you sign a petition that says that you are loyal to the United States, then you can become a citizen. And all of the children of those people are automatically citizens. So that means that if you, back in the beginning of our country, if you came in, then all of a sudden, if you drop a baby, that baby could become a citizen. And then in 1995, it was repeated. In 1798, it was repeated. In 1802, it was repeated. That means that Congress has the ability to determine citizenship for everybody that comes here. And I believe that Congress can write a law that determines naturalization that coincides with what the 14th Amendment says, because that's the way that it is. Second thing that Congress can do, Congress can also say who is allowed to be in the country. So if you come in and you have a baby and you're not a citizen of the United States of America, we will return you to your country. Your child can come back anytime your child wants, but your child cannot come with anybody else that's not does not have authorization to be with the child or to be a citizen of the United States. So that means just because you have a baby in the United States does not mean that you get to stay here. And it does not mean that a minor, a child, has to have an adult who is not an American with them in the United States. That a minor must have parents, right? Must have parents who are citizens in order to come back before they're 18 years of age. No other citizen will do. You can't just ship a baby from Guatemala to Kansas to be in the care of someone else. I'm just saying, right? You got to have parentage. You have to have adoption papers. You have to have something else. There's something else that Congress can do. But this fight is going to go on and on. However, they won birthright citizenship, and I think that they should have, because the historical precedent says that if you are born in the United States, that you automatically become a citizen of the United States. And that's the way that the law is. That's the way the Supreme Court designed it. And we've got lots of room, but we don't have to let people in the country. We don't have to let anybody in the country. If you're on a tourist visa and you're pregnant, even 1 week, you can't come into the country. You cannot come into the country if you're pregnant, period. That's it. Well, what about everybody else? Well, we have limited time for visas and HB1s and all these other things that they're just going to have to make some laws that says who can come into the country and who can't come into the country. And then they're going to be sued about it anyway. So this is going to stay in the courts forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So that's what I got on that. So we had no citizens. So recapping, we had no citizens at the beginning. So we had to let somebody in. We had to let immigrants become citizens. We had to let their babies also become citizens automatically, because if we didn't, we wouldn't have a population. We would still all be foreigners, right? So babies of people that are born here had to become. And that's where the historical precedence has been set. When they wrote the 14th Amendment, although it was not intended for that, they didn't change the language enough to make it significant that it only applied to people that were currently in the country, and it did not apply to people that were coming from outside of the country. It might have been short-sighted by the people that were writing the legislation in the 14th Amendment. It might have been very short-sighted because they didn't see birth tourism. They didn't see the massive influx of illegal aliens and everything like that. But hey, sometimes you don't see what's going to get you until it gets you. So that's the way that it goes. So those are the Supreme Court decisions. I think the Supreme Court got them basically all right because they were very thoughtful on all of those things. And I think they were even right about the birthright citizenship. It's not our fault if the new constitutional amendment has to be written. Hell, we got rid of the 19th Amendment, and we're, when the 19th Amendment, was the 19th Amendment alcohol? Was the 19th Amendment when they got rid of alcohol? There's 7, 8, 19th. 19th, the right of the citizens to vote. No. Okay, there you go. The 18th Amendment, 1 year after the ratification of this article, manufacture, sale, or transportation of an intoxicating liquor is done. And then we got rid of that with the 21st Amendment, which says the 18th article of amendment to the Constitution of the United States is repealed. So we can repeal the 14th Amendment. We can repeal it. We probably won't, but we can repeal it if it gets past Congress and it goes out to the states. Right now, there are enough states that will get rid of it and say that we need to change the language of the 14th Amendment. And you can do that in one amendment. You can go that the 14th Amendment is changed to must be loyal citizens of the United States. Something like that. So, Carolyn says, Native Americans here make and sell light-off fireworks all on the own land, even though fireworks are legal once you take one step off of their land. Saying fireworks aren't legal in most areas except 4th of July, but they can be abused at any time. They can be used anytime. Well, thank you very much. I didn't understand it, but now I do understand it. Hey, let's hear it for the Native Americans in the crowd. Whoop, whoop. Go fire off those fireworks whenever you can. Celebrate. Help me out here. Don Ledger is still unclear. Oh, I don't understand. So I didn't see Don Ledger's comments. So I don't get all the comments here. I don't know. Logan Calcaterra said the 18th. There you go. They are not legal, but they fire them off anyway. Well, that's the way that it is in Cabot, Arkansas. Fireworks are illegal most of the year, but people still find them and fire them off here in the United States or Cabot, Arkansas too. So anyway, that's the show. I am way over. I apologize for that, but I just want to let you know I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you guys watching. Remember to like, share, hit the notification bell, all that other stuff. Remember, this is Mickey in the Middle, the quintessential show for Middle Americans. We're all Middle Americans welcome. Doesn't matter where you've been, where you're going. Just matters that you're here right now. You guys have a great night. I will possibly see you next week. Maybe not. I'm going to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We'll see whether I'm still here. I got some stuff going. You guys be good. Love it. Take care.